at your cat.
Yes, my cat he roused himself up to come say hello.
Needs some attention.
He does. He does. Well, he's gonna have to hold off for a minute because my attention is focused on you. I'm
Okay.
Andrew. I am the outreach coordinator for the Critical Zone Collaborative Network Big Data Cluster, one of 9 clusters that are studying how we can all work together to better understand things that are happening in the very complex systems of the critical zone. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Lee Lee. I am a professor in civil and environmental engineering at Penn State University. I've been working with Julia Pajot and the Big Data Group, actually since before the Big Data project. There's a smaller project before Big Data project was started, like 2017, I think. And we have been collaborating since then. So I my work has been mostly focusing on asking questions related to, for example, how changing climate or land use or human activities influence water quantity and also water chemistry, mostly like river and the stream, and see what show up, what chemicals show up in these waters and how they are impacted by a lot of drivers.
There's so much. Just you describing a little bit about your work and your interest, I want to talk all about, but that's not what I'm here to ask you about
Okay,
today.
sure,
You
sure.
were recently honored and being recognized. I want to make sure that I read the name, the Barry and Shirley Issett, could be
Yeah,
Isett,
I
professor
said,
in
yeah.
civil and environmental engineering at Penn State. Congratulations. I mean, a named and endowed chair in a department is quite quite a thing to achieve. Was that something in your career as you were going through your studies that you ever thought you'd have a named position inside a department?
Um, I didn't go up since I was saying. I guess it's a bit more organic process. I mean, when you when y- so I think it's a process of you want to do good work and good things happens, and it's a more organic actually I'm not used to do things like go after getting awards. I have very few items on my CV because I tend to not really pay attention much, so I'm not, yeah, I'm not used to a lot of attention. That's what I would say.
That's it's you're not ambitious. It's not like I'm set my sights on that.
To that award, right? To that
So you wrote this very reflective, and I'll link the blog article so people can read it. And there's so many things in there that we could talk about, but something that really grabbed my attention was something that I'm fairly confident many undergraduate students, graduate students face, and you tell this very compelling story about when you changed your mind about what you wanted to study. You found something else that interests you, you'd committed to doing some of this other work, and then you had to go to a person who'd say, I want to change my mind in what I want to do. And then you also talk later about the support that you have found with particularly women in the sciences and STEM fields throughout your time. What support would you give to an undergraduate or a graduate student who may be thinking about, I don't really like the thing I thought I liked. I found this other thing that I want to study, but I don't quite know how to tell people that I want to change my path. What would you say to
Mhm.
people in that situation that you have faced?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I have been very lucky in that perspective. I was struggling too in terms of, oh, what should I study? And you finally, I mean, a lot of time it's a bit foggy, right? Like when you early in your life you get exposed to different things, and you don't really have a clear crystal mind about, oh, what really excites me, unless until you are being exposed to that thing. Right? That moment you realize, oh, I want to do this. So a lot of time, at the beginning it's more like, exploring. I think it's exploring and kind of a bit in the dark and not sure what your path is. And when you get to the moment that you realize, oh, I really want, I really like that, I really want to do that. I think once you get to that point, it's probably clear to, a student when they realize the excitement of doing certain things that is very different from when they do other things. Um, and some people, I think in a way, so because everyone have different experience, everyone have kind of different paths or things, what is good for you, even parents sometimes, right? They have their view of, oh, how do you live a good life, right? What kind of life is comfortable, or right? So it's very different. So I think it's very, very important to listen to yourself and be really true to yourself. What are you really excited about? Not because you as the one know yourself the best. Um, and other people, whether it's parents or friends or professors, teachers, they probably have good intention of saying, oh, this may be better for you, or that may be better for you from their perspective, but they are not you. Right? They are from their perspective, their views are shaped by their own experience, and that's different from your experience, different from your time. It's a lot of things are different. A lot of time I think about, our lifespan past is kind of like, water drops going through, land on the surface, and depends on where it goes through, it has different chemical composition, and everyone is different. So I think it's important to speak to yourself, listen to yourself, what is really exciting, and then stick to it. And even, other people maybe disagree, they might change later. It's important to be there for yourself, and stick to your whatever dream you have, things, passions. I think other people wouldn't understand as much as yourself.
When you were in that moment facing that choice to change sort of the field of study that you were going to be pursuing, did you resist it in yourself to say, no, no, I've got to stay focused on what I started. I already have done so much work here. I've got to stick with what I'm doing rather than start off, you fought against yourself.
um at first I was a bit, because I think more because I kind of was very uncertain about what's going to happen if I switch. Like it's it's dark. I don't know what will happen and how my advisor would respond. And you don't see a path, like if I switch, how do I walk even, right? I don't have a project on this, there's no financial support, probably existing one at least, it's very hard to see what could be happening. That's why I struggled for a few months before I tell my advisor what I think, and that's actually very challenging time, because it's a lot of almost like, soul searching. Do I really want to do this with all these other risks and uncertainty and things like that? Yeah.
You must wake
So
up in the middle of the night and be like, oh my gosh, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be thinking about this for the next couple of hours until I can fall back asleep. But you mentioned also in the blog posting that your advisor said, great, let's work together. You took months to craft a new path and a new PhD program to follow. And so in the end, it turned out for the best.
yes, yes.
And then, so that is this sort of support and the collaborative nature that you describe and that you have found so rewarding, fulfilling, and essential, is to have people who identify as female helping out other female and supporting other female scientists. And you say, I think it's at the end of the thing, you want more women in STEM, hire more women faculty members. Talk a little bit about what that means and you're thinking about how that will help bring in more voices to this field that you love.
Mm. Um, so if we start with my advisor, I feel, the transition, she has been very supportive. It took me an extra year. So when I started my PG in 1999, usually, you finish in group typically maybe 5 years, something like that. So I took essentially an additional year to figure out a project, and I mean, like, there's some luck in that aspect as well, that there's another big project kind of that can fund a lot of PI at that time. on carbon sequestration, which my advice is involved in, which would could involve some modeling work, which is actually what we did. But at first she was more like, um she has a lot of trust in me, I would say. Like, right, like what, I mean, I sometimes imagine how I would respond in such it's something that I appreciate later. Like, you were not a advisor, you were not in their shoes, like you don't know what how the student can do and can figure that if they can finish actually with a meaningful PhD thesis, right? And so I mean, the first thing I'm really thankful is she has a lot of trust in me. She believe we can figure it out. That's the first thing. But also I think there is this women in power thing, that she sees things, she has so much capacity to accommodate different ideas, different things that excite people. Is that something that she, the modeling is not her at that time, at least. She, later on, she says gradually with me transition to modeling, I think she also have other students do a lot more modeling. But at that time, it's like she was a hardcore experimentalist. We don't know what's going to happen. And she can accommodate so much, which I see it again also in later other women's. I talk about very briefly on another woman in when I was a postdoc and research scientist in Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. I in that, so I finished my PhD. I went to work in Lawrence Berkeley National Lab as a postdoc and later also as a research scientist. When I had my first baby, my husband and I were like two different locations. My husband working in Microsoft, so
Mm,
I wanted to have the first child, that birth period in remote working, go to Seattle area, so we can be together. And I have some discussion with this also another woman, Susan Hubbard. She was I forgot what's her position at that time, but anyway, she's in a position that oversee a lot of people going around and project, and then so I had my direct supervisor. We have some discussion, and remote working is something in 2005, I don't know, 2007 or something never heard of. Right, you work where you work. um I have some discussion with her. I have same feeling that she is so trusting in a way. This is very different from what she is used to, and she has been very accommodating, thinking that we can work this out. You can work this thing out, and you can continue to be productive for your project and things like that. And it, in a way, it also support my career, so I have the continuous of
mhm,
work without being disrupted by childbirth and all that, right? So I just feel they have so much capacity to accommodate different things, and can see things differently or do things different that will help. Or maybe also because they are women, they have some similar experience. They know the challenge as a woman and how hard it is to remain in science of with together with these, being giving having babies and giving birth and being parent. Maybe both of them have their have kids as well. So I think in a way they are very accommodating and knowing the challenges, and try to really try hard to keep me in science. So and then so that get back to your question, more women in power, because without them, if they say no, yeah, at some point this will either my career will be disrupted, or things will happen. I might not be here talking to you at this point, right? So I think there's being having a lot of women in power and they have similar experience as other women that can see things happen to, younger women, earlier career women that will experience, brings a lot of compassion and
Mm.
accommodating. They try to work their best to make things happen. I think that will make a huge difference. And once you have, I always say, it needs some critical mass of women that enough to hold hands, right? I this experience with Julia Pajot and some of my other women collaborators, like a lot of my other projects also have a lot of women collaborators, is once you have um, enough number of women, then you can, collaborate, work together, write proposal together, write papers together, and you really can hold hands together. And that's a very powerful thing. Yeah. So when you have more women in power, you can get that mass to a critical, and then you can form a community essentially. Yeah.
Thank you. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. We'll catch up again in a couple of months. I'm very, very excited to talk to you more about your specific, the work that you do. There's so many. I guess this is one last little question to ask. Why do you collaborate so much with so many people? Your name is associated, not just lead author on papers, but you contribute to so many. Is it do you just love the work? Do people seek you out? How do you become such a prolific collaborator?
Mm, good question. A lot time I think it's mutual in a way that when I write paper, a lot of time I like to hear what other people think and what they think about the idea. So the collaboration naturally, I try to include people that I think they'll be interested in the topic and will help with the discussion and have a view of that will help shape the idea. But also we have, I think, because in a way we have a tool that relatively new, like in the watershed scale. There's a lot of hydrology model and coupling that with biogeochemistry processes and think about reactive transfer processes in the shallow subsurface. The reactive transfer modeling is a tool that have been used more in the subsurface, groundwater that is not directly linked to surface condition like precipitation, solar radiation, things like that. That's the traditional reactive transformer, so it's more like deeper subsurface. And then when the creative zone project comes in, I realize there's need to have these hydrological processes together to understand the reactive transfer process. So this watershed reactive transfer model is something new. It's a kind of new toy we developed to
Mm.
understand and coupling these processes. But also, I think it's the nature of the critical zone science in that it's very interdisciplinary. So it has a lot of people from a lot of field work together on, like, just you see in Julia's project. And to me, that's I found, I was telling some of my friends, my happiest moments are when I'm a student, when I'm learning something new. So the critical is the perfect platform to learn a lot of new things, from your collaborators, from your collaborator students, from my own students, and that is kind of the nature of this critical zone science being, include a lot of different disciplines and help us to get more integrated views. So I think also all different aspects of how we work together and think about these different questions from a more integrative perspective. That's how things happen, publications come up. Yes.
I'm going to thank you again for taking a little bit of time today. I'm going to stop the recording, but we'll hang out and we'll say goodbye after the recording is stopped. So thank you.
Mhm. Okay, thank you, Andrew.